So for some backstory, I, 28F, lost my mom to cancer when I was 15. Growing up, it was always just the three of us, mom, dad, and me. We were really close, especially mom and I. She used to say I was her mini-me because we shared the same interests in art and music. Every Sunday, we would sit together while she showed me her jewelry collection, telling me stories about each piece and where it came from in our family history. My dad, 56M, took mom's death really hard. For the first year, he threw himself into work and barely spoke to anyone. I basically lived at my aunt's house during that time because he couldn't handle being around me. I look a lot like mom and I think it was too painful for him. Things started to change when he met Janet, 52F, at a grief support group. She was divorced and had a daughter, Amy, 26F. Janet seemed nice enough at first. She would bring over casseroles and help clean the house. She encouraged Dad to spend more time with me and tried to include me in their activities. Looking back now, I can see she was laying groundwork to become part of our family. They dated for about a year before getting married when I was 17. I never really bonded with Janet or Amy, but I tried to be polite for Dad's sake. Amy was always trying too hard to be my sister, constantly wanting to borrow my clothes or hang out in my room. I didn't mind sharing some things, but I was very clear about certain boundaries, especially regarding my mom's belongings. The jewelry collection was something special. My mom had inherited it from her grandmother, and it had been in her family for generations. There were about 30 pieces in total, including her engagement ring, wedding band, several beautiful brooches, necklaces, and earrings that dated back to the early 1900s. Each piece had a story and a special meaning. Mom was so proud of that collection. Before she passed, Mom specifically told Dad that she wanted me to have the entire collection when I turned 18. She made him promise to keep it safe until then. I remember being in the hospital room when she made him swear on it. She knew how much those pieces meant to our family history and wanted to make sure they stayed in her bloodline. I moved out for college at 18 and then took a job in a different state as a graphic designer. I would visit during holidays but wasn't particularly close to anyone except Dad. Every time I asked about the jewelry collection, Dad would say it was safely stored away and I shouldn't worry about it. I trusted him and figured I'd get it when the time was right. Janet and Amy always made comments about the jewelry whenever it came up in conversation. Amy would talk about how she'd love to wear certain pieces at her future wedding. I always shut down those conversations quickly, reminding them that Mom wanted me to have the collection. Janet would get this weird look on her face but never said anything directly. Last month, I came home for Dad's birthday. I'm getting married next year to an amazing guy, and I wanted to finally get Mom's jewelry collection so I could incorporate some pieces into my wedding. I had specifically planned to wear her sapphire necklace. It was her favorite piece and matched my wedding colors perfectly. When I brought it up at dinner, Dad got really weird about it. He wouldn't make eye contact and kept changing the subject. Janet kept shooting him these looks across the table. Finally, after an hour of deflecting, Janet spoke up and said they needed to tell me something. Turns out they had given most of the collection to Amy for her wedding last year. Amy had apparently been planning her wedding and complained about not having any family heirlooms to wear. Janet convinced Dad that since Amy was getting married first, she should have the jewelry for her special day. They never even told me, let alone ask my permission. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. These weren't just random pieces of jewelry, they were literally the last physical connection I had to Mom and her family history. Amy isn't even related to Mom's side of the family. The pieces had been passed down through generations of women in Mom's family, and they gave them to someone who had no connection to that history. I asked Amy where the pieces were now, thinking maybe I could at least get them back after her wedding. That's when she casually mentioned she had sold some pieces because they weren't her style. She kept Mom's engagement ring and a few other items but traded the rest for more modern jewelry. She said the vintage style wasn't really her thing and she wanted pieces that better matched her personality. When I started crying, Amy actually rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. She said the jewelry had just been sitting in a safe for years anyway, so at least now it was being used. Janet backed her up, saying I was being selfish for not wanting to share with my stepsister and that in a blended family, we all need to make sacrifices. I completely lost it at that point. I told Dad he had betrayed both me and Mom's dying wish. I reminded him of the promise he made in the hospital room. He just sat there looking ashamed while Janet did all the talking, defending their decision and telling me I needed to grow up and stop being so precious about material things. I couldn't stand being in that house another minute. I packed my bags and left that same day. I blocked everyone's numbers except Dad's, and I sent him a long message telling him how deeply he had hurt me and that I needed time away from all of them. Some extended family members have been reaching out saying I'm being too harsh and that Janet and Amy are my family now too, so I should be willing to share these things. But I can't get over the fact that they gave away my inheritance without even telling me. These pieces weren't just jewelry, they were physical pieces of my family history, tangible connections to my mom and her memory. And Amy just sold them off like they meant nothing. My fiancé is completely supportive of my decision to distance myself from them all. He saw how devastated I was and said anyone who could be so callous with such meaningful family heirlooms doesn't deserve to be in my life. Some friends think I should try to salvage my relationship with Dad at least, saying he was probably just trying to keep peace in his new family. But I don't know if I can ever forgive this betrayal. Right now I just feel lost and angry. Every time I think about those pieces being sold off or worn by someone who doesn't understand their significance, it breaks my heart all over again. I know Mom would be devastated if she knew what happened to her family's legacy. Update 1: Things have gotten significantly worse since my last post. After I left Dad's house, I thought the jewelry situation was the worst thing that could happen. I was wrong. What they did next made me realize just how toxic Janet and Amy really are. About a week after I left, I got a call from my cousin Sarah. She's one of the few family members I'm still close to, and she had just gotten back from visiting Dad's house. What she told me made my blood run cold. Apparently, after I left, Janet decided to go through my old bedroom, claiming she wanted to convert it into a home office. While moving things around, she found a loose floorboard under my old desk and discovered my mom's diary. For context, Mom started writing this diary during her last year of life. I found it in her bedside drawer a few days after she passed. It was leather-bound with her initials engraved on the cover, a gift from her sister. I couldn't bring myself to read it back then, the pain was too raw. So I hid it in my room, planning to read it when I felt stronger. Over the years, I guess I just left it there, knowing it was safe and private. But Janet didn't respect that privacy at all. Not only did she read the entire diary herself, but she also took photos of certain pages and shared them in our extended family group chat. She claimed she was just trying to share memories of Mom, but the entries she chose to share were very specific and calculated. According to Sarah, Janet specifically highlighted entries where Mom wrote about feeling insecure or making mistakes as a parent. She also shared an entry where Mom expressed guilt about working too much during my early years. It felt like Janet was trying to somehow prove she was a better mother figure to me. But the most shocking revelation came from the later entries in the diary. It turns out Janet and my mom weren't strangers before Dad's grief support group. They had actually worked together at Wilson & Partners marketing agency about a year before Mom got sick. Mom had written several entries about their workplace interactions, and they weren't pleasant. Apparently, Mom had been the lead creative director on a major campaign for a national client. Janet was part of her team. When it came time to present the campaign to the client, Janet somehow managed to schedule a private meeting with them first. She presented Mom's entire concept as her own work, taking credit for months of Mom's ideas and planning. The client loved the presentation and specifically praised Janet's creativity. When Mom found out and confronted her, Janet claimed it was all a misunderstanding and that she thought they were working collaboratively. Mom took it to their supervisor, who launched an investigation. In the end, Janet was removed from the project, but the damage to their friendship was done. Mom wrote about how betrayed she felt, especially since she had considered Janet a friend. She wrote, "I can't believe someone I trusted could be so manipulative. I worry about her being around other vulnerable people. She has this way of twisting situations to her advantage while making herself look like the victim." Reading those words now, everything makes so much more sense. Janet's overly helpful behavior after Mom died, her insistence on being involved in every aspect of our lives, and now this situation with the jewelry, it's all part of the same pattern. She's been trying to erase Mom's memory and replace it with herself from the very beginning. When Sarah told me about the diary, I immediately emailed Janet demanding an explanation. Her response was both shocking and revealing. She admitted that yes, she had harbored resentment towards Mom for years because of the work incident. According to Janet, Mom had ruined her career prospects by exposing her attempt to take credit for the project. She actually tried to justify giving Amy the jewelry as karma for what Mom did to her, though she quickly tried to backtrack when she realized how terrible that sounded. I forwarded Janet's email to Dad, thinking surely this would open his eyes to who he married. His response was weak as usual. He said that the past is the past, and we should try to move forward as a family. He suggested family therapy and said Janet was just hurting and lashing out because she feels excluded. How can he not see that she's been manipulating everyone for years? Amy has been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about how some people can't let go of the past and blood doesn't always make someone family. She still refuses to return any of the jewelry pieces she hasn't sold, saying they were given to her legally by Dad. The fact that she's still wearing my mom's engagement ring in her Instagram photos makes me feel physically sick. Several family members have reached out after seeing the diary entries, saying they had no idea about Janet's history with Mom. Some have apologized for pressuring me to reconcile with them. But others are still defending Janet, saying she's changed and that Mom would want us all to get along. I've been having trouble sleeping since finding out about all this. The thought of Janet reading Mom's private thoughts, specifically choosing entries to share that would make her look bad, and then trying to justify her actions because of a workplace incident from years ago, it's just too much. This wasn't just about the jewelry anymore. This was about Janet systematically trying to undermine my mom's memory and replace her in our family story. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week to discuss my options regarding the jewelry, but honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at those pieces the same way now, knowing they've been tainted by Janet's revenge fantasy. I just want to honor Mom's memory and protect what's left of her legacy from these people who clearly never respected her, in life or in death. Update 2. After my last update about Mom's diary, I decided to take legal action regarding the jewelry. I hired a lawyer who specializes in estate disputes, and what we discovered has blown this situation wide open in ways I never expected. My lawyer did some digging and found that Mom had actually been more thorough than anyone knew. She had left a detailed legal document with her attorney, Mr. Peterson, specifically about the jewelry collection. The document stated that all pieces should be held in trust until I either turned 25 or got married, whichever came first. It included a complete inventory of every piece, along with photos and approximate values. When we presented this document to Dad, he completely broke down. Through tears, he admitted that he knew about the trust. He said Janet had found the paperwork 3 years ago while organizing his office. Instead of telling me, they decided to keep it hidden. Dad claimed he was in a really bad place mentally at the time. Apparently, he had been dealing with severe depression and had stopped taking his medication. Janet had used his vulnerable state to convince him that giving Amy the jewelry would heal their broken family. She told him that since Mom had always been so generous in life, she would have wanted her jewelry to help unite our blended family. Dad said he knew it was wrong, but Janet kept insisting it was the right thing to do, and he was too emotionally exhausted to fight her on it. The lawyer sent formal letters to both Janet and Amy, demanding the immediate return of all pieces listed in the inventory. We included copies of the trust document and photos of each item. Janet responded through her own lawyer, trying to argue that the trust wasn't valid because Dad had acted as executor of Mom's estate. But our lawyer quickly shut that down. Amy initially refused to even acknowledge the letters. She posted more passive-aggressive social media updates about gold diggers and greedy family members. But then something unexpected happened that changed everything. Last week, I got a message from Amy's fiancé, Tom. He wanted to meet privately to discuss the situation. We met at a coffee shop, and what he told me confirmed my worst suspicions about Amy and Janet. According to Tom, Amy had lied about selling most of the jewelry. She still has about 90% of the collection hidden in a safety deposit box. She only sold 2 smaller pieces that weren't as valuable. The story about trading them for modern jewelry was a lie to make me think the pieces were gone forever so I would stop asking about them. Tom found out about this when he overheard Amy and Janet laughing about how they had convinced everyone the jewelry was gone. He said they were planning to slowly sell pieces over time and split the money between them. They had already gotten one piece appraised at an auction house. What really got to Tom was discovering that Amy had been wearing a replica of Mom's engagement ring in her social media photos, not the real one. She had the actual ring stored away because she was afraid of damaging it before they could sell it. All this time she was taunting me with a fake ring while planning to profit from the real one. Tom said he couldn't stay quiet after seeing how calculated and cruel they had been. He provided screenshots of text conversations between Amy and Janet discussing their plans for the jewelry. He also gave us the name and location of the safety deposit box where Amy has been keeping everything. Janet found out that Tom had met with me and completely lost it. She's been calling and texting him nonstop, alternating between threats and pleading. She even tried to convince his parents that he's having a mental breakdown and can't be trusted. Amy has been telling everyone that Tom is lying because I must have paid him off or seduced him. The lawyer is using Tom's evidence to file for an emergency injunction to freeze access to the safety deposit box. We're also looking into possible criminal charges since they essentially stole from a trust and tried to sell protected assets. Dad is devastated all over again. He keeps calling and leaving voicemails apologizing and saying he had no idea they were planning to sell everything. He claims he really thought Amy just wanted to wear the pieces for her wedding. I almost feel sorry for him, But at this point, his weakness and inability to stand up to Janet has caused too much damage. The extended family is in chaos. Some people are furious with Janet and Amy for lying to everyone. Others are angry at Tom for betraying family secrets. A few are still trying to convince me to drop the legal action to keep peace in the family. But I'm done playing nice. Mom wanted me to have these pieces, and I'm going to honor her wishes by getting them back and protecting them properly this time. Update 3. A lot has happened since my last update about Tom exposing Amy and Janet's deception. The situation has finally reached a resolution, though not the way anyone expected. First, our legal action was successful. The court granted the emergency injunction, and we were able to secure the safety deposit box before Amy could remove anything. The bank's inventory matched almost perfectly with Mom's original list, confirming Tom's story that they had only sold 2 smaller pieces. We were able to document the condition of each item and photograph everything. During this process, more of Amy and Janet's lies started unraveling. The bank records showed that they had actually tried to get the pieces appraised at 3 different auction houses. They had even started paperwork to consign several items for an upcoming estate jewelry auction. If Tom hadn't come forward when he did, half the collection would have been sold within weeks. Amy's relationship completely fell apart after this. Tom ended their engagement and moved out of their shared apartment. He told his family everything, including showing them the text messages where Amy and Janet discussed how they would split the money from selling the jewelry. Amy tried to spin it as Tom being jealous and unstable, but his parents sided with him after seeing the evidence. This led to another shocking revelation. Apparently, Amy had been lying to Tom about other things too. She had secretly taken out several credit cards in his name during their engagement and racked up significant debt. He only discovered this when he started separating their finances. The jewelry scheme wasn't just about hurting me, they needed money to cover Amy's shopping addiction. Amy had to move back in with Janet and Dad. She lost her job at the real estate firm where she worked because Tom's father was a partner there. Now she spends her time posting bitter rants on social media about how I ruined her life and turned everyone against her. She still refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Janet hasn't fared much better. Several family members have cut contact with her after learning about her long-term manipulation and lies. She tried to claim she was just trying to help Amy have a nice wedding, but no one's buying that anymore. Even her own sister called her out publicly for her behavior. Dad made one last attempt at reconciliation. He suggested we all attend family counseling to work through our issues. He even offered to pay for it, saying he wants to fix things before my wedding next year. But I declined. Janet and Amy are still insisting they did nothing wrong and that I'm overreacting to a few pieces of old jewelry. They seem incapable of understanding or acknowledging the hurt they've caused. I've decided to remain no contact with Janet and Amy permanently. My relationship with Dad is limited to occasional texts. He wants to walk me down the aisle at my wedding, but I'm not sure I can trust him to be there for me anymore. He had multiple chances to stand up to Janet and protect Mom's wishes, but he chose the easier path every time. The recovered jewelry is now stored in a secure bank vault under my name only. I've had each piece professionally cleaned and documented. The 2 pieces that were sold are unfortunately lost forever, a pearl brooch and a pair of emerald earrings that Mom used to wear every Christmas. But I'm grateful to have recovered the rest of the collection. I'm planning to pass these pieces down to my own children someday, along with Mom's diary and the documentation of everything that happened. They should know their grandmother's story and understand the importance of protecting family history. More importantly, they should know how to recognize and stand up to people who try to manipulate and deceive them. Some family members still think I'm being too harsh by maintaining no contact. They say family should always forgive. But I've learned that sometimes choosing peace means accepting that not all family relationships deserve to be saved. Mom's diary entry about Janet's true nature was a warning I wish I'd read years ago. At least now I can honor her memory by protecting what she left behind and keeping it away from those who never truly respected its significance.